Hi, and welcome to the Halfie Project podcast. My name is Becky. Sitting across the table is Cedric Sky City. And together we make up the co-hosts of the Halfie Project podcast. Hello, cooks. I said your name to make sure you know I was talking to you, as opposed to the hundreds of other people in this room. Hi, cooks.
Hello.
How are you, cooks?
I'm doing fantastic.
Are you?
Yeah, I'm doing okay.
Name one fantastic thing that has happened lately.
Lately?
You're taking too long.
I'm trying to think legit.
Why are you taking such a long time?
Hold on.
How fantastic is this? Come on. You can do it.
Can I pass?
You can't think of one fantastic thing that's happened lately. How about, I made a really good dinner?
Oh. That was fantastic, yes.
You know what? Just pass. Just pass. I don't want to listen to this.
I love my life, but my life is pretty just... These days.
These days it's monotonous.
It's very monotonous.
Yeah. It's kind of like the wake up, work, sleep, repeat.
Yeah, I don't really go anywhere either, so I just... Yeah.
That's all right. You know why? Because the most important things in life aren't necessarily big, exciting, go out, gotta see it things. They are sometimes just right here at home. Home and home, in your heart, in your home. Home is where the heart is. And that's where the real good things in life are. Someone write that down. That'll be a quote one day. Well, today, you guys are just joining us here for a nice conversation that we are sharing together as a couple, as friends, as soon-to-be legal family members.
Who refers to marriage? I mean, it is true they're family, but
Yes,
I don't know.
legally tied
It sounds funny.
individuals. Speaking as those people today, today we just kind of wanted to talk about. I guess it is family. I guess it is distance. But I think ultimately what I really want to talk about is reconciliation and forgiveness, especially in a lot of mixed Korean homes or Korean American or part of the diaspora, this intergenerational trauma that can exist. And how do you overcome those traumas that maybe you see in your own parents or between you and your parents or just you yourself have to reconcile things with family members so that you don't have regrets as time goes by. There's a reason why I wanted to talk about this topic today. One is because, it's something that I think about a lot. I think we think about this a lot, especially since our parents are living in another country. They're not living here in Korea. And so we don't have the benefit or what's the word? We don't have the joy. What is the word? The luck, the fortune.
Yeah. Opportunity.
Right.
Ability.
To see our families whenever we want to. That doesn't exist. And especially now, with this global pandemic, it makes it even harder. So the fact of seeing our families used to be kind of a choice. We can go when we want to go, when we make it happen. Now, when we realize, it's no longer in our hands, it puts things in a different perspective. And I think, so something that I've noticed when I talk to people who are half Korean, Korean adoptees, this is a big one, people who maybe have had some kind of separation between them and their family, whether this is a cultural barrier, a language barrier, whether this is abandonment, whether this is separation because of state adoptions. What if this is because, your parent has some kind of trauma that they're holding on to and it's too toxic in your life because you guys just can't get over it. So some degree of separation may exist between you and your parent. This is primarily, I think, the discussion that I'm having. And that space between you, whether it's physical or emotional or language or cultural, can be very hard to get over, to bridge, to erase as time goes by. And we feel this more and more keenly as we get older, as more time goes before we see our own parents. And in a way, this is my plea to our listeners, who have many of you guys fall into one of those categories I mentioned. A plea to you guys to not let time go by so quickly before making that effort to cross that gap. There was, of course, a catalyst to this conversation. A couple of days ago, one of my high school friends passed away. And if any of you have experienced death in some form, it can change the way you view life. And so maybe this is my way of trying to philosophize my feelings, trying to understand that. But the long story short is just to really recognize that those people who love you in their own way, in the possible much that they can, maybe the capacity is not so great, or what you needed, or in the way that you needed, but they do love you in some way, somewhere, somehow, at some time. To recognize, appreciate that, and to put aside the things that are not as important when you come face to face with the recognition of the ending of time. So I think this is a very necessary thing to say because, like I said, trauma and irreconcilable differences, misunderstandings, physical distance, all of these things are very common characteristics, I think, in mixed homes or the Korean diaspora in all its spectrum.
Yeah, I actually, I've had the privilege of having generally just a very good relationship with my parents. And for those of you who may not be aware, my father has passed away, and he's been gone for about 10 years. But prior to that, I had a very good relationship with him, good relationship with my mom. They had a good relationship with each other. So I realize now that I'm older that that's definitely not the common narrative. Mm-hmm. And so I've been very privileged, and I recognize that. But I've also been able to see maybe some of the relationships that, they've had with maybe family members that weren't so great. And, there are things that happened. I also know, a lot of friends, some closer than others, that just have this disconnect with their, say, for example, their parents, mm-hmm. because it's just this generation gap. The first generation grew up in Korea, moved to the States, and, they're second gen, they're totally American mindset. It's very, mm-hmm. very typical, I think, in a lot of people's stories. And what's tragic, at least to me, is the fact that, one, their relationship, between parent and child is sort of fractured, and it's just like, I don't know, they're separate, even though they might see each other from time to time or even live together, it's like they're not on the same page. There's not this sort of mutual respect. And it breaks my heart. And again, I recognize I come from a place of privilege when I say this. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it feels like to be in that situation. But one thing that I feel like I've noticed is a lot of it seems to be just, misunderstanding, not understanding each other. And, that can cause a big wedge, mm-hmm. because you just don't understand. Now, here's an example of this. And this is a total hypothetical example. So this isn't anyone that I'm thinking of in particular, but let's say you have parents who, maybe a dad, right, who immigrated to the United States, did the typical immigrant, hustle and grind, started their own business and just worked, 70, 80 hours a week to give their kids a better life. And he's just 6-7 days a week he's working, mm-hmm. And maybe the spouse is helping with the business. and they go through ups and downs. And, you know, the child who is growing up as an American, in the case of growing up in America, goes through school and sort of has, you know, a decent life because of the hard work of the parents. The parents demand so much of the child because, you know, they came to America, they want to give the child a better life. And of course, in their mindset, they want their child to have a good job,
They don't want them
stability.
to struggle like they had
No,
to.
no. And they just put all of this like pressure, and sometimes it comes out in a way of maybe lashing out at their kids or like really like expressing frustration, even anger, and maybe even physical at times. You know, the dad might hit the son, you know, or something like that, and the son or daughter just doesn't understand. And I'm not advocating abuse, of course, but just for the example's sake, the son or daughter, just all they can see maybe is, oh, my parents or my dad doesn't care about me. My dad, all he does is just nag at me.
They
You know,
demand too much.
yeah, it's like 잔소리 every day. And why can't I make my own decision? Why can't I just be what I want to be? You know, why do I have to try to get into the best school and get this type of job? And so from my perspective, and I'm not nowhere near qualified to analyze a situation like this. It's just my opinion, but it seems like there's just a misunderstanding in this type of situation where really just perspective differences. But that doesn't mean that there isn't love there, but it's just how it's expressed seems to be different, and how both parties looks at life is a little different, and that can cause a wedge, a division, which is understandable. I can imagine myself probably feeling one or the other way if I was in their shoes. Easy for me to say. But all that to say, I feel like a lot of times it does come down to maybe understanding and sort of a lack of empathy, you know, not being able to see the other side or put yourself in the other shoes. I feel like sometimes that could be the case or play a part.
It gets a little bit difficult, of course, when it comes to wrapping your mind around understanding, seeing where they're coming from versus the feelings that have cultivated towards that person, the feelings that you might have about the situation, because what happened, history, story, experience is rational. You know, you can break it down. This year, this happened. I did this. I sold my business. I spent 90 days a week. I worked this long, blah, 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 whatever. There's no 90 days a week. I was going to say 90 hours a week, but that just felt excessive. But you can count down, you can quantify everything, and it's very logical and rational. But the emotions are not something that you can just very easily grasp. Very easily. You can't understand at emotional, visceral level the suffering or struggling an individual went through. And so this is where it gets very difficult to reconcile, oftentimes. And it seems like sometimes it's just one person or the other has to be like, you know what? Okay, you'll never get over that. And you hurt me because of that. But I have to see a bigger picture. That I know you still love me and you still care about me, even though you had to do these things, even though these terrible things happened, even though you hurt me in this way. And you have to make a decision. Am I going to be able to look past that? It's a lot easier said than done. I try to think about in the cases, you know, in mixed Korean homes, especially, because that's what I can speak from for experience. And from the people that I talk to, the stories that we hear, those who we meet off camera, you know, and talk about their own lives, that it is oftentimes these fractures happen because, say, the parent is Korean, he's a Korean dad, and he ends up marrying a woman who's not Korean. Their relationship fails and suffers, and it's very painful ending, and they end up hating each other because of cultural differences, misunderstandings, family differences, so many little things that pile up, which ultimately end up with their separation, and then a distaste for that person's race, let's say. Oh, all white people act like this. Oh, all, you know, whatever people, fill in the blank, they're all like this. You know, they're hurt by this experience. They have a child. This kid is part Korean, part that other race. It's very easy then for, let's say, the Korean father to see their child and only see the bad side of their mother in this child. Oh, all white people are like this. You're also white. And this, I think, can happen. Maybe not consciously, but nobody said emotions made sense all the time. And this can be other reasons for rifts. And this is why it's very hard to ask people who are in these situations to be like, you should just understand. You should forgive your parents. You should reconcile and get over it because family is thicker than, your family is more important than anything else, right? So in a way, we're kind of in catch-22 because we talk about these things now in this episode. We're pleading with you guys from our own experience, don't wait too long, but also fully understanding it's not an easy thing. Not an easy thing to request. No doubt there are many people who have so many traumas, and I see it in, the Half Korean pages that I follow on Facebook. People use it as their venting boards, which I understand. But again, sometimes, some things seem bigger when you're forced to look at it in a certain perspective. So this is why I just wanted to talk about this and just say, don't wait until it's too late.
Yeah. Yeah, I think at least making some sort of effort would be very beneficial. At least, at least there's some sort of sense of closure.
You might not even get closure in some cases.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just awkward. Like, I'm thinking about, some of my Korean family where it might just feel awkward. Like, what do I say to you? And we don't have these experiences. Or you said something to me many years ago that really hurt me. Or I know how you treated my mom. So I just can't forget that. It can be very, very awkward to try to overcome those emotional obstacles. Yeah, nobody's saying it's easy. But I also do think that at the end of the day, especially people who are estranged from family, I imagine there are very good reasons for that. Toxic relationships are very dangerous. But to a certain point, I think it is important to look at those relationships, maybe from a distance, safe distance, and really ask if things ended now as they are in this moment, and I never had a chance to see you again or say anything I wanted to say, or at least tell you thank you for being my mom, thank you for giving birth to me, at least that, or recognizing the gifts that they did give you that maybe you see in retrospect. Would you be okay in this moment with how things are to it just ended and that's it? I think when you think on this kind of black and white terms, regret, will you not regret? Then you see more clearly. What kind of relationships do you want to keep, and do you want to salvage them, especially among your family members?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is more me just like getting it off my chest, I guess. But I hope it is valuable. The people I have in mind are those who are from, mixed homes, especially where their parents didn't work out, or you bear the brunt of your parents' trauma or dislike for each other. For the family members who, if you are in an international relationship, one side is always going to be far away, physically, distance, and culturally. So you have this extra work that you need to make to have a healthy relationship and healthy homes with your family who is not with you physically in this time. So I think about those families as well. And if you yourself are struggling with deciding how can I forgive myself? How can I forgive my mother for treating me this way? How can I forgive my family? How can I get over this awkwardness? We haven't spoken in 20 years. Can I reconcile these generational, cultural differences that we have? Can I do that? You're always welcome to talk to us. I'm not saying that we're counselors. I'm not saying that we have all the answers, but I am saying that being able to shed a little bit of light on these maybe dark corners in our hearts can at least offer a little bit of healing or maybe a little bit of clarity to yourself. And that being said, you can always get in touch at thehalfieproject@gmail.com. We are going to be releasing a series of videos with a counselor, friend of ours. She's also half Korean, and she focuses especially on mixed race, international families, and cultural differences, and just how do you work through all of those things as an individual and identity. And we're going to be releasing a series of videos talking about different topics, and we are going to specifically address forgiveness, reconciliation, dealing with trauma. And if anything that we talked about in this podcast was like, well, I would like to learn more, then stay tuned because we're going to release more episodes on that on the YouTube channel. Anything else you wanted to add, Cooks?
No, I just want to give a word of encouragement to everyone out there. Fighting. Yeah, seriously. I think if we could just encourage each other, I think that can go a long way.
Yes, and that's what we're doing on this community here. So thank you so much for listening. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, feel free to leave a comment below. And as always, get in touch with thehalfieproject@gmail.com. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening. We are The Halfie Project.